wait a minute. That's right. It's Patio Stories time. We're live. Oh, sorry about that here. Let's just take out that camera here. It's hanging out in the herb garden. Herb and a little bit of vegetable. That's right. Check out this lemongrass. Hey, I'm Allan Karl, but you guys already know that. And welcome to the fifth episode of Patio Stories. It's right now Saturday evening, pushing 6:30 as we do this live. Of course, those of you watching this on the replay, that really doesn't matter. But it is, what is it? June 13th. That's right, June 13th, Saturday. Let's get on with this right now. Let's get a seat. It's such a lovely day to be on the patio. I mean, look how green everything is. I should say a couple things. Now, I want to point out this right here. Hey, Lucy. Nice to see you. Told you we'd get one of these Patio Stories cooking soon enough. This here is a cucumber plant. It's gone out of control. I never grew cucumbers before in my life, but this is a Persian cucumber. You know, the little ones. I love those. They're a little sweeter. They have less seeds, less water, and man, they're great in my fattoush salad. Well, not really my fattoush salad, but the fattoush salad in my book. And they're just good to eat. You know, just sprinkle a little salt on them. They're fantastic. So, anyway, people are coming in. They're going to join us here on an episode of the fifth one for Patio Stories here. How's that working out? Can we see the little charcuterie? I didn't go too heavy today, you know. It's you know, because I'm after we do this live. Oh, hey, Dice. Yeah, come here. Dice loves cheese. Dice is my foster. Dar doesn't like. Come on. Come on. Come on. Well, come on. Let's see, we'll just go do it this way, huh? Silly cat tricks. That's Dice. Okay. Anyway, Dice is, hopefully I'll find a home soon for Dice. Okay, let's get on with this. For those of you who joined me last, I skipped a week. I'm sorry, I did skip a week. Let's get the glasses on, see we've got some comments coming in. If you were with me on episode 4, which was actually the 27th of May, I think it was, I did the haircut live with Angelique. And we talked about all the haircuts I've had in the... Dice is beautiful, huh? All the haircuts that I've had over the countries. And, I was thinking... I told a story about Egypt. I told a story about a haircut in Egypt. But, before we can really get into stories, it's Patio Stories. We gotta... So, it's been kind of hot today. We had this cool spell, which also led us to some great sunsets that you guys have been seeing if you're following me on the Facebook. This is a Stolpman Grenache. It's a rosé of Grenache, actually. And it's kind of rosé weather. So, anyway, no more Dice. That's now the problem. The cat's just going to sit there. So, we're going to open up... we can take the price tag off. Not too expensive. $20 for a Stolpman Rosé 2019. You always want these things young, All right, I can't get that thing off, so we're just screwing right through it. Anyway, episode 4, Angelique cut my hair, gave me a nice beard trim. We talked about Egypt. We talked about how that was like the most memorable haircut I'd had in almost the whole journey because of this concept of threading, that they get the real minute microscopic hairs from your ear, trimming the edge of the beard. They've got it down there in Egypt for that, the threading. But anyway, I'm so happy that since then I haven't had this raggedy, scruffy, image going on here. But But so I've been. It's clean. It's also it's nicer when you don't. I don't have hair anyway. Let's face it. But the hair that comes in, it comes in. If it gets too crazy in certain places, then I look like a clown. Or if the beard gets so crazy, man, I start looking like a bad rendition of Santa Claus. Look at that color, huh? Don't you love that? Nice and pale, Grenache, from Ballard Canyon. That's up near Santa Barbara, Santa Maria area. All right, well, cheers. Happy Saturday to all you tuning in. Thank you for joining Patio Stories. We're going to talk a little bit about Egypt, but maybe before I go to Egypt, I wanted to chat with as I said, I skipped Patio Stories last week, and I don't know, it wasn't intentional. It's just the week went by, and part of that probably is because of the craziness in our country right now. Craziness not only related to the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic that right now we're seeing in California seems to hold steady, but there's 20 states that are actually increasing. And, if you look at it, I'm not a health... Oh, Dar's coming. I'm not a health expert, far from it. I don't like going to doctors, and I hate hospitals. And the sight of blood, yeah, it's not for me. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that health experts that I've read in all various media are worried, certainly more worried than any of our most of our politicians, I guess. And then we had was it 20 days ago, George Floyd and that horrific murder caught on video. This was obviously a historic moment, and we hate to have history be related to death. But as his brother said many times in the House hearings and the other interviews, that his brother changed the world, and the world is changed. And there's been a bit of an argument. I'm hardly ever political, and this is not political, but I thought it'd be important to share one story as it relates. I heard a few interviews of some, mostly law enforcement officers, downplaying or not necessarily buying into the concept of systemic racism in our country. It says, yes, there is racism. They all acknowledge that, of course. Systemic, and however you want to define systemic, it could be the moot point. It depends on what the definition of is. We've heard these kinds of crazy arguments in the past. But I was traveling through South Africa. Now, if you got to peel back the history a little bit and look at South Africa, we lost Nelson Mandela several years ago, and how he brought about change in South Africa during an era called apartheid. And many, I think, young people now, certainly many of those protesting and leading these cool protests. I went to one in Encinitas last week as well, and it was started by a teenager. And these young people and teenagers have no idea about apartheid. Now, maybe they studied it in school a little bit, but apartheid was systemic racism, frankly. Their people in the South African society at the time were defined by the color of their skin. And not only the color of their skin, what their mix was, whether they were 100% or a blend. And it sounds like I'm talking like wine. But, and this is the way it was for 30, 40 years in South Africa during apartheid. And they had, at the time, we heard in our terrible protests, and I don't support violence. I don't support destruction of property. I don't support looting and rioting. I support peaceful and purposeful protests. That's fine. But let's not dilute the thing, or let's not take advantage and, you look at this as an opportunity to go and steal and loot and, push whatever notions of far leftism or far rightism that, these these people that have, you know, taken advantage of the situation. But anyway, in South Africa at the time, they actually had curfews all the time. Now, we thought it was pretty funny, or not that it was pretty funny, but it was pretty serious in places like LA, Chicago, Detroit, New York, certainly Minneapolis, that the government imposed curfews, not allowed on the street. Well, during apartheid in South Africa, there was a curfew. If you were black or colored, you had to be in by the time, and I don't remember the time, I think it might have been around 9 o'clock, and they had these like air raid siren whistles that would blow. And they would blow, and that was the sign that says, okay, if you're one of those who have to follow the curfew, you better be in by the time that siren goes off. And let me be clear, people are not meant to be categorized, cataloged, or segregated. No, of course not. You know, there is only one race, and that is the human race. And that is humanity and people. And those of you who followed me in my journeys all around the world, you know how much I love people, all people. Anyway, I'm in this bar in a little town in Eastern Africa. And I had parked my motorcycle at a little guest house I was staying at, and I walked down the street to a little bar and ordered some bar food and a cold beer, as I like to do at the end of a day of riding. And there were some young kids in there at the time, and soon they're kind of curious about me. They hear my accent. So, like, I have an accent. They go, oh, well, where's your accent? And next thing I know, they're buying me beers. It's a fun. We're talking, we're joking, we're sharing stories, and then at one point, the conversation turned a little bit to somebody there had a lawnmower stolen from their farmhouse. This is in farm country, and you know, they start talking. It's like, oh, what do you think did it? And you know, the next thing you know, they're saying, you know, things were so much better. These kids said at the time, when the sirens went off and when we had curfew. And I looked at them, and at that time, those kids were not even 5 or 6 years old during the time of apartheid and those air raid sirens. So that is clear, you know, nobody is born a racist. Nobody has racist blood in them when they're born. Racism is taught. Racism is learned. And I looked at these kids, and I didn't have it in me to say it, but I wrote about it. I wrote about it on my blog, about how I could not believe that these kids young, you know, thought that life was better. A life that they didn't even know at 5 years old, when the sirens went off to tell the blacks and the coloreds that it was time for them to get off the streets. Think about that. I don't want to get all dramatic with you guys, but I thought I'd share that story because it always impacted me. And now, in the fact that I skipped a week of my Patio Stories and watched and participated in a peaceful and purposeful protest, that I thought I'd share that story because, you know, the racism that is prevalent globally, you know, didn't certainly start with the police brutality of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, or others. Trayvon Martin. No way. But you know what? This is where racism must end. And like that, things are still tough, I think. There are tough neighborhoods. There are tough times in South Africa. But they moved past that. But, you know, there is an underbelly of racism that is going to be really hard to dilute and exterminate. But let's hope that this is a time we can really see some action. So, anyway, there's one race, human race. Racism is not in our blood. We're not born with it. We learn it. We're taught it. We can unlearn it. And we can stop teaching it. So, anyway, there's my little get off my chest moment. So, thank you for tuning in for that. So, that's lovely. I've got a little prosciutto here. So, what I wanted to talk about, and I didn't know at the time, because the riots and the looting and the fires and all the madness really hadn't started, I believe, at the time that I had my hair cut the last Patio Stories. But I mentioned in that I would tell you another story from Egypt about a run-in I had with law enforcement. Okay? And this is actually kind of a good story. So sit back, let me tell you the story, then I'll let you guys go. I'm going to go walk to the beach and see a wonderful sunset, I think. We have clouds again tonight, so it should be good. So, in Egypt, I was in Aswan, which is at the very, if you take the Nile cruises from Cairo to down the river, up the river, you go to Aswan. And Aswan is, it's very close to Sudan. There, it sits on the edge of the Nile River in Lake Nasser. Lake Nasser is formed by the High Dam. And it's a very cool area. The people there are Nubian, a lot of them. So, because the Nubian desert was actually flooded to create that lake. And, Egypt has been a target of terrorism long before 9/11. Long before the, I would say in the era of the 80s and 90s, and certainly the early 2000s. And at one point, one of the major, in the Valley of the Kings, one of the major antiquities, relics, sites, archaeological sites, had the site of a massive massacre. It was a massacre where I can't put the number on it, but let's be sure it was probably more than 30 or 40 tourists. Tourists were targeted in this attack and killed. And it shut down tourism for a long time in Egypt. There was another bomb in a hotel in Sharm el-Sheikh in the Sinai Peninsula where they were also targeted tourists. So Egypt has had this unfortunate wound that is not healed, where some travelers and tourists are hesitant to go. So in order to address the safety of tourists, the Egyptian government put together this notion that anybody traveling as a tour group will always travel with police or military escorts. So, if you go to Aswan, now remember, most people going to Egypt are going on a boat on the Nile River, or they've hired a car, maybe they're taking a bus, they're on an organized tour, they're not on a motorcycle. I'm on a motorcycle. I'm in Aswan. My goal is to get to Luxor, which is kind of the city central point between Aswan and Cairo in the Valley of the Kings there, and to explore ruins around there. I'd already spent time, Abu Simbel, the Temple of Isis, so many cool things in the Aswan area, but now I was going up. So I was told, because you have to register when you are at a hotel or guest house there, and you have to tell them when you're leaving. When you're leaving, they need to know where you're going. It's not so that it's like China. There are cameras everywhere. They just want to make sure. This is them trying to make sure you're safe. And I said, I'm going to Luxor. And they said, well, which convoy are you leaving on? I said, convoy? What do you mean convoy? It's like, I got my map. I know exactly how to get there, and I'll figure that out. Oh no, you can't travel on Egypt roads alone. Now, I had gotten my motorcycle to Egypt on a ferry boat from northern Sudan in a place called Wadi Halfa. And from Wadi Halfa, it takes, almost a whole day overnight to go in this slow boat from Sudan to Aswan. And from there, my motorcycle was put in quarantine. Not because it had any virus, but because I had to make sure it got fully registered and documented through the massive bureaucracy of the Egyptian, government. My God, the most bureaucratic border I've ever come into and left, by the way, Egypt, out of 81 countries. So here I am, the hotel clerk saying, no, you got to go there, you got to check in with them. They let them know, they've got a checklist, who's coming. So I show up at the at this convoy, and there are minivans, there are large buses, there's individual cars, there are military vehicles like jeeps, and on each of these jeeps, there's about 4 or 5 people. Everyone except for the driver and the front passenger are carrying AK-47s or automatic weapons, and they they will have one of them in the front of the convoy. One will sit, maybe, depend on how long the convoy, not all the time, but sometimes in the middle of the convoy, and then one in the back of the convoy to support the pickup in the back. Now, I've got to go and follow along. So as the convoy starts going, it soon becomes clear to me that this convoy poses more danger than it does safety for me, Allan, WorldRider on a motorcyclist. Thanks for joining us. We're in the middle of a story here with, let's see, we've got, well, you know what? We're going to interrupt this story for a minute. I'm going to bring in my sister-in-law. Okay, hold on. Maria's going to come and say hi, and then we'll get into this story. This is my sister-in-law, Maria. Can you see? Let's see if she's still there. Maria, you coming in?
Yeah. Hey.
Oh, that's Maria. Well, God,
Yeah.
you really, you know, what happened to your hair? Did you get a haircut?
I did.
Holy shit. Well, this is actually Jonathan Karl. This is my brother. There's Maria. That's my sister-in-law. Hey, welcome to Patio Stories. Thanks for chiming in.
We like to chime.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt the story. I just want to do a quick interlude. You mentioned the bombing in Sharm el Sheikh.
No, we said it wrong.
I was actually I was in Jerusalem at the time of that bombing and covering a story, and got quickly diverted to go to Sharm el Sheikh you know, I was just told get in a car with a driver and go down to the site of that attack, which, you know.
Yeah, because think about it, from Jerusalem to.
It was a drive. It's just a drive.
Yeah. It's you got to go over the ferry boat, but or you could.
No, I didn't go over any ferry boat.
Yeah. That's true. You can in the north.
Yeah.
You didn't get to cross the canal either, but you. Wow. So what year was that? That was like what?
I'm going to say that was 2004 or 5.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So it was pretty. Yeah. So Egypt has had that cloud of we see terrorist attacks, but in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, there's no tourists there probably. That's why. Hey, Beanie, hey, we got a cat. We have Dice over here.
Well, because so much of Egypt's economy is tourism, and you've had, and this was not a new phenomenon then. I mean, you had the bombings at Luxor, and you've had a number of attacks in it, but it's a place that it's obviously one of the great tourist destinations in the world. The pyramids.
Yeah, that attack outside Luxor at that Tamatektik, I think is what it was, or I can't pronounce these things. How many people died in that? That's more than 50 people. I mean, it was a massive.
It was a huge attack. I do think it was. I don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot. I actually, Alan, I think it was actually over 100. But double check me. Google will tell you. Google will tell you because
we'll do a fact check on that. Maybe somebody tuning in here can bump it in. But this is why and this is why the Egyptian government is trying to do everything it can to guarantee the safety, to give people the confidence that they're going to be okay, after these kinds of attacks. And they would have these convoys that tourists were obligated. There was no other way to travel.
Yeah.
Or
you just go and you arm yourself like you used to do. Didn't you used to have a pretty heavy armaments on dock, right?
Well, yeah. I had Q. If you remember, Q helped. He used to help James Bond quite a bit.
Q. Yeah, you had Q. like didn't you have like the gun in the exhaust that would kind of?
Yeah. I had that dummy exhaust. All I had to do is do what they call a double clutch on the shifter, and that was the thing. So I could take anybody down. Yeah.
Anyway, so I like there's a person, you may not know this, but there's somebody on Twitter that has this thing called Rate My Skype Room, because all these news people are on television now from their homes because of, the studios are many of them are shut down, and people are coming. They're appearing on cable news or network news as well from their homes.
Oh wow! Yes,
from Skype.
Yes.
So they have this Twitter account. It's called Rate My Skype Room, and whoever these people are, they go and they give people a score of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10 about how their Skype room is. Now, I think that if Rate My Skype Room looked at your room, you'd probably get a 9 or a 10. It's very green. It's very it's pretty. Now I know it's not really a Skype room. This is more of an Instagram room, but
this is Instagram. But we can certainly do Skype. This is all very possible, right?
Yeah. But it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I sometimes, if I took this one, I look like I had something coming out of my head.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is the problem, right? Hey,
anyway,
way,
I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to. You mentioned Sharm el Sheikh, and that brought back that memory. It was a pretty frightening drive. It was in the middle of the night. I didn't know what I was getting into. And of course, everybody else was leaving as fast as they could get out of.
You're going the wrong way, right?
Out of Sharm.
Yeah. And which, by the way, is a big resort, because a lot of people go there to dive in the Red Sea, because it's one of the most spectacular diving destinations, and that's a big jumping off point. Sharm is.
And it's also a place where they've had any number of summits, international meetings. It's because it's a place that was considered to be a place that could be very easy to secure, because there's only so many ways in and out, so you can kind of secure the place. And so that was a pretty shocking bomb, and it was pretty devastating. I remember seeing the aftermath.
I can't imagine seeing it. I mean, there's certainly, if you can find the YouTube videos of the coverage that time. Yeah. It wasn't there. iPhones weren't prominent then, so any video footage is.
Well, the iPhone was not even invented by then, but
no, in 2007 is when that was invented. Yeah.
Wasn't it 6? Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
7. It came out. He announced it at the Apple Macworld.
2006.
January 2007.
Oh, 2007. Okay.
Yeah.
God, it's amazing how much the world has changed. 13 years.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, for those of you who are tuned in, we have a special guest that popped in. This is my brother, Jonathan Karl. And not only is he my brother and a world traveler, but he is the chief White House correspondent for ABC News. And he has a new book out called Front Row at the Trump Show.
Oh, yeah.
And if you haven't read it or listened to it, it is definitely a great story, because John has been following our president for longer than any other journalist. 24 years?
26 years.
26.
Actually, that gives me an idea. So my book came out this spring. Your book, Forks, I had read, is now available in paperback. So what I think we should do, maybe if I don't know if anybody on here thinks this is a good idea, but why don't we do an event? Why don't we do an online event, like a joint book event? I could interview you about Forks. You could interview me about Front Row at the Trump Show. We could kind of do a back and forth. We could bring in some interactive ability for people listening to. Oh, look, Emily just waved. For people to ask questions. I think this could be a really good event. Are you available? Like, maybe we do this in next couple of weeks. Would you be available?
Let me check my calendar.
That's pretty busy.
Yes.
and okay, all right. Well, let's do this. Are you going to use that backdrop there? Because I need to figure out. I need to compete and try to see if I can get as good a backdrop.
Maybe we'll go in. Well, maybe we'll go into the studio, so you give you a chance to see something different. We go in the studio.
Okay.
We can pull out some video. We'll go beyond Instagram.
Look,
we'll do something good.
Lucy Huff says yes, so we got one vote for yes.
Okay, Lucy.
We got one vote for yes. Is there anybody else out there that would like us to do this?
Anybody else want to go ahead and chime in and say hello and say yes? let's do a
Okay.
Karl Brothers book event.
Okay. I like this idea. Now, how do we? I just want to set some ground rules. So I'm going to interview you about forks. You're going to interview me about front row at the Trump show.
Yeah.
Like who starts? Who asks the first questions? Are there any questions that are off limits? Are there, you know?
Well, I think, well, there's nothing should be off limits. I mean, you know, unless that we are giving up promises.
No classified information, right? No
Classified,
classified information. Okay, so if we do this event again, it'll be an event that'll I will interview you about forks. You will interview me about front row at the Trump show. We will have some back and forth, and we will bring in feedback from the audience out
Yeah,
there.
and I think could we accept some questions from the audience? Why not?
Yes. I like that. I like that. Okay, so why don't we shoot for sometime around Bastille Day? But I'll get you and I will talk offline to
Okay,
figure out the next
Bastille
event.
Day. Now we do have to have some wine when we have this story, so I guess it would be apropos to have French wine on that.
Yeah, well, I've got some wine right here actually.
Oh, okay. What do you got?
This is Greek wine. This is from the island of Santorini, which, by the way, would be a great place to do this. Do we have a budget for this thing? Maybe we could, you know, 'cause I could see doing on location. Go out there. This isn't a Sertico. It's a white wine. The grape is a Sertico from the island of Santorini. Argyros is the producer. Great guy.
Very well known, very famous producer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
All right. Well, that's good. I'm in.
Hey, you know, I do those Journeys webcasts, and my guest last week was a Greek guy.
Yeah, no, I saw that. You had Leon Logothetis, right?
No, Panos. That was the week before.
Oh, Panos, yeah, Panos. But you've had a couple of Greek guys.
I've had two Greek guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is okay. Gigi's saying it's Corona time.
Well, I don't think we're going to be drinking Corona with all this. I think it's gotten dangerous.
Yes, it's gotten a little. Yeah.
You used to try to stick a lime in that stuff. I never understood that.
I say whatever your advice is, go for it, because join us. We like to have you join us. But I like that you're drinking Greek wine. By the way, I should say I'm doing Journeys again on Monday. It's going to be earlier this time because I'm going even further east.
Oh, where are you going?
I'm going to Georgia.
Georgia?
Yeah.
So Atlanta or
Athens? Athens.
Athens,
no, that's
Georgia.
No, wait a minute. How, Georgia? No, the country of Georgia.
Oh. Over there, the former Soviet Republic of Georgia.
Absolutely, one of the former.
You know, they make wine there. They actually there's a burgeoning wine industry. The Soviets actually used to get wine from Georgia. That was kind of a sort. And you know, it was from Georgia. It was Stalin.
Stalin came from Georgia, and in fact, my guest is actually he has a winery, and he is one of the most recognized political figures in Georgia.
Gary Kasparov?
No, it's not
because
Gary
he's
Kasparov.
Georgian.
I didn't know he was Georgian.
Yes, he's Georgian. Yeah. He's totally Georgian. Yep.
Excellent. You know, he actually did a COVID call with my buddy Ryan Pyle, who's stuck in Istanbul. But we're confusing our audience here. I wanted to say that my guest, his name is Andro. He is from Gori, and Stalin was born in Gori. So
I don't know if that's like something you want to advertise. That it's.
There's actually a Stalin museum in Gori. Now, did I go when I was there?
Yeah, no,
I didn't have the time.
That's
John.
Didn't
have the time.
Yeah, I don't think I would like that.
Therese has joined us now. Hello. We've had for those of you who have just started joining, I'm Allan Karl. Of course, this is the Patio Stories series that I've been doing for the last month or so. But But Jonathan Karl and my sister-in-law, his wife, Maria Karl, have joined in just for a quick little interlude because I was telling a story from Egypt. And John was quick to point out that he had, in the Egyptian people, just kind of bringing you up to date, the people have just joined in. The Egyptian tourism has been constantly, I mean, it goes to even Arab Spring, they're constantly get set back due to violence, terrorist activities, and actually tourists targeted in the Luxor area, certainly and then in Sharm,
Yeah.
How do you say it? Sharm el Sheikh, right? That how we say
Yeah,
it?
Sharm el Sheikh. Yeah, Sharm el
Yeah.
Sheikh.
And you know, this is and what happens is now to give confidence to the travelers, tourists going to Egypt, they force travelers to travel within military and police protected convoys, so that that you know this is a way, one of the several things that they require you to do. Also registering every time you leave and go somewhere, so they know that you're where you are. But anyway, John had been called. He was covering an event or a news cycle in Jerusalem at the time of the Sharm el Sheikh attack in the Egypt, and he had to hightail it and drive overland from Jerusalem to Sharm, which is at the very bottom of the Sinai Peninsula.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so that's Jonathan Karl. We've been talking.
All right.
You know, we're going to do an event together, because this
Yes,
is just
we're going to do an event. We're going to do an
warm-up.
event in July. We will get back with a firm date, but this will be really good. I'm looking forward to this. This will be very good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let you get back, so I don't want to interrupt. I just figured I would try to, just check in on this thing. I've heard about these patio stories, and I heard you talking about something that I had some experience with, so I figured I would check in.
Yeah, and before you go, let me just one last thing. Hang on, I'm gonna get up here. Continue talking to our audience here.
Oh yeah, sure. I don't know where he went, but I do like the backdrop there. What does he have? It's a collection of herbs. It looks like he's coming to us from the rainforest. The rainforest there in Encinitas. What do you got there? Oh, look at that! That's this is one of the most famous cats.
Dar, actually, this cat has an Instagram account, and I don't think. Have you ever gone live? Dar's never really gone live.
It looks like she's thinking, is that in my contract?
Oh well, Dar is very famous. Dice was already in the Patio Stories earlier with a piece of cheese, and Dar is we'll let Dar go.
This is good. By the way,
hey John,
the
thanks for
attack,
popping in. We'll start this. We'll get this thing going.
Okay. By the way, that Luxor attack in '97, 62 people.
62 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it Tamahatak? How do you say it? Was it? You have it up.
I don't know.
You have it up in front of you. I went to the
Yeah. Brutal. All right, so I'm gonna see you. Well, I'll talk to you offline, and we will set a date.
We'll set that up, and we'll let everybody know
over all the thing, and we will do this. This is gonna happen.
All
right.
Stay tuned. Jonathan Karl, Chief White House correspondent, my brother for ABC News. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, hang in there.
Okay, buddy. Okay, hey, welcome back. That was kind of cool, right? You never know. They have to be spontaneous, The Patio Stories evolves all the time. So I was in the middle of a story, and for those of you still tuned in, I'm sorry you got kind of hung on there. Let me just recap real quick. In order to give confidence for travelers and tourists in Egypt, they require all tourists moving from point A to point B. There's a lot of antiquities. There's a lot of beautiful ruins, museums, all kinds of sites in Egypt, and that Nile River. There's a road that rides the Nile River. But in order to travel, you have this convoy, which has military with officers with automatic weapons in the front, sometimes in the middle of the convoy, depending on how long it is, and then in the back of the convoy as well. The convoy I was in had at least 50 vehicles. So you can imagine there's certain times during the day where they gather in Aswan or Luxor or Cairo for going south, and everybody has to go together. So I followed the law, the rules. My hotel told me I needed to be there and check in. I'm on my motorcycle, my dock, my F650 GS Dakar, and I show up, and there's the general. He is a general. He literally is a general. And he sits in the Jeep, and he's got his thing, and then he's got people with guns. There's two other cars with guns. So I'm actually, motioned to be towards the front. I think there's 2 or 3 cars ahead of me, and then the general and the guns. So we get moving, you know, and it's a big procession. You know, it goes and there's whistles being blown and walkie-talkies squelching, you know, all this crazy stuff. We get going, and there's one main road that goes along the Nile River, and that's what we're taking. Okay, there's not a lot of roads that are in Egypt. Everything is clustered around that Nile. So you have a main road that goes up the Nile, and then you have a lot of forky roads that go, you like that? Forky roads that go, you know, closer to the river. So there we are. And as we get going, there are vans, individual cars, buses, minivans, the gamut. You've got all kinds of vehicles. I've got a minivan behind me with about 12 people in it. In front of me is another minivan, and then there's another car ahead of that. And then it goes back for, it's probably maybe not quite a mile long, but it's pretty long, this convoy. It's definitely probably a half a mile. I don't know. It's, you know, at least 75 to 100 vehicles, as I recall. So anyway, here we are cruising, and the guy in the minivan, who's just a driver, and he's got a bunch of tourists from who knows where in the back of his minivan, and it occurs to me this guy doesn't have any sense of space and about the notion of, if you had to stop quickly, how much space you need ahead of you to stop so you don't hit the vehicle in front of you. Now, I'm on a motorcycle. It's nerve-wracking when somebody is so close to you, because it's not like there's a car and I can get rear-ended and maybe, you know, I get a case of whiplash. No, the risk and the potential for injury and damaging the motorcycle even beyond repair is crazy. So it is nerve-wracking, and I just, every time I try doing the best I can, I'm putting my hand down like this to move back. I'm motioning, move back. I'm turning around like this and glaring at them, and I'm going like this, you know, nothing. And then, so what I finally decide to do is to go up in front of the next car. So I come, you know, comes up there, the oncoming traffic. It's only 2 lanes. So I pass the minivan ahead of me, and then I get behind the car that's right behind the military guys, the guys with guns. I can see the 3 guys actually in the back, right? There's 2 on 2 seats and one actually looking right at me. It's a triangle, boom, boom, boom. And they're looking, there's a car in front of me, but they can see me over the hood of the car, and they're just popping, you know, holding their guns, and it's a rough road, and it's bopping, and I'm cruising along, and then the same thing is happening. This minivan driver is exactly there. I was like, wait a minute, did that other guy pass? No, this is another driver, and he is like, I could almost, I'm not even joking, if I could lean back the length of my body, I could tap the hood of his car. That's how close he was. I'm scared to death. As much as the Egyptians think that they can instill confidence and say there's safety, these cars are all traveling way too close together. And they're also going at about 70 to 60 miles per hour, 120 kilometers per hour, for those of you know. Anyway, this guy is right on my ass again. So what do? I pass the car in front of me. Now I'm right behind the Jeep with the guys with guns, and they're bouncing and they're bouncing. And this is crazy. The guy in the car is the same thing. He's like, I swear to God, his bumper is 3 feet from, I mean, a meter from my rear tire. I am scared shitless. I can't stay in this convoy anymore. I feel like if anything happens, I'm going to be the one with the most susceptible crash or injuries. So as we come to a long straightaway, I can see there's no cars coming. I'm looking at the guys in the back with the guns, and they're looking at me. And then I freaking downshift. I grab that throttle, and I go and pass the guys, the military unit in the front, and thinking they're not going to follow me. And that's right, they didn't. So I'm cruising along, and I'm thinking, my heart's bleeding. I'm breathing. Well, that lasted for about 4 miles when I come to a police checkpoint. And at that police checkpoint, there's 4 guys standing in the middle of the road when they see the motorcycle coming up, and they're and they're doing this to me. Like, you wait, Mr. Motorcycle. You wait, Mr. WorldRider. You have to get back in that convoy. So the convoy shows up, and they stop there. And it's interesting because the police checkpoint is not just a police checkpoint. It's also a place where there's it's checkpoint's using the word, glamorously. It's a roadside shack. It's a little lean-to with a couple guys with coolers and candies and goods to sell. Everybody pours out of all of the tourist vehicles. And, it turns out this is probably the uncle of the general, or, his brother, just looking to, make some extra cash from these tourists. I thought it was very funny because I went to see if I could buy a Fanta, a little orange soda. And I never forget, because I know I bought Fanta in the tiny little market in Aswan, and what they were charging at this roadside stand was 10 times the price. And I'm like, this is not the real price. It's funny, some places take advantage of tourists. Nothing against Egypt, but this was a little bit much. Most of those other tourists had no idea what the real price was, but they were paying it. Anyway, I tell the general, I can't ride in the convoy. It's too dangerous. Either you tell the guy who's riding immediately behind me to leave a distance equal to the stopping distance he's going to require in case there's a problem. He won't do that. So I says, well, let me just go ahead of you guys. I won't go too far ahead. He says, no, you have to ride in the convoy. Eventually, everybody's bought their overpriced Fantas and Cokes and snacks, and we're on the convoy again. And I'm, once again, right behind the Jeep because he wants to see me now. Dun, 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 dun. And same thing, I've got the black minivan behind me, and he's riding right on my ass. And I, again, my heart is racing, and I can't concentrate on anything but how close he is. It is so close I could almost touch his windshield. So it takes some nerve, and eventually I do it again. I just say I can't do it. So I downshift, crawl on the throttle, bam, past the Jeep again, thinking these guys are with guns. What are they going to do? Shoot out my tire? What are they going to do? They're supposed to protect the tourists, not harm them. Anyway, long story. So they don't come after me. And there's no another police checkpoint. And finally, I get to Luxor, and safe and sound. And I see one of the tourists that I had seen buying the overpriced Fantas, who I'd connected with a bit. And he said that they did stop another time. So they stop a few times to let people stretch their legs. I think it's a 4-hour, 5-hour, I don't know, maybe not, from Aswan to Luxor, I forget, but several hours. But they let the people out a couple times to buy overpriced Fantas and snacks. And this guy said he went up to asked about where's the motorcycle guy. And the general that he asked grumbled and shook his head and said, he's in trouble. He's in trouble. Well, I never did get in any trouble in Aswan, in Egypt. But that was my confrontation with law enforcement. I decided that for my own safety, it was better for me to make a decision whether I should ride in that convoy. Was I putting myself at risk that possible terrorists could have targeted me? Maybe. I don't know. But I made it there. And what I decided to do when I left Luxor, I stayed about a week in Luxor exploring the antiquities there, is instead of riding along the route of the Nile to Cairo, I would go out into the Sahara Desert. There's one road that does a big, like almost a half moon, big loop through the oases, through a place called Baghdad. And I can't remember all of the places, but it took about 2 or 3 days to take that Sahara route. Often the road would be wind swept with sand over it, and I'd have to really go slow because sand is not my friend, but it is a paved road. And I did run into several police checkpoints, and when they saw me, because not a lot of people ride out there, not a lot of people are traveling out there, I was like a welcome breath of fresh air, because they may have days where nobody comes through. And every time I went, they always handed me a bag of dates. It was so cool. And then by the time I got to Cairo, I had like 3 bags of dates. And I tried to give them away, and nobody wanted them because I couldn't eat all these dates. But I kept my bag and Eventually found homes for the other 2 bags, kept 1 bag, and that lasted me until I went to Jordan. Anyway, my run-in with law enforcement, I did come out of there safe and alive to tell you this story. So from a crazy haircut in Aswan through a crazy general who wanted to insist that I ride in a convoy with crazy drivers just threatening my patience and my nerves. Wow. That was something. Anyway, this is what happens. You know, you sometimes just have to take a chance. You know, it's worth the risk. Was the general going to come after me when he has a 75 to 100 cars full of tourists? Probably not. Did I need to obey the law there? I probably should have, but I don't think I could have remained sane had I done that. So I decided to outrun the Egyptian military in a tourist convoy protected by the military. And I laugh about it now. I laugh about it. That's your story from the patio here. And finishing the rest of my cheese. It's getting to be about sunset. I think in about 35 minutes, I can get to the beach before sunset. And, you know, it was fun. This one went a little longer because we had a special guest with my brother. And I'll make sure to get another stories in. But tune into my Instagram if you are not, or to my YouTube channel, WorldRider. Please subscribe there. I'm trying to build up a stronger base so YouTube, gives me a little bit more recognition so we can do more cool things. And or if you're subscribed to my blog, all those places, I'll tell you about the interview. Jonathan Karl, ABC White House correspondent, is going to join me on an online live chat where we're going to interview each other about our books. So meanwhile, it's still sunny there. I know a lot of you. I know where Lucy is tuned in. And let's see, who else is, we have Pagel, and and Emily's there. I'm sure it's dark back there, but there we have it. Thank you for tuning in to the 5th episode of Patio Stories. I'm Allan Karl, WorldRider, your host. Tune in next time when you see the little indication. I don't know when it'll be. It's not scheduled, but we'll do another Patio Stories soon, and we'll do that interview with my brother. Thanks again. Cheers. Enjoy this beautiful weekend. Stay safe, remain sane, and smile on. Love you guys.